Welcome to the Three Martini Lunch. Grab a stool next to Greg Columbus of Radio America and Jim Garrity of National Review. Three Martinis coming up.
Very glad you're with us for the Monday edition of the Three Martini Lunch. Jim Garrity is not here today. We hope he's back tomorrow or later this week. If you haven't read The Morning Jolt yet, read all the way to the end, and you'll understand why Jim is not here today. Jim is fine. His family is fine, but a tree fell on his house over the weekend. I'm sure whenever he does return, which is hopefully tomorrow, he will provide plenty more details on that. But that's where Jim is today, negotiating with the tree removal crew. But here in his place, Scot Bertram, General Manager, WRFH, Radio Free Hillsdale, 101.7 FM on the campus of Hillsdale College. He's the director of the Hillsdale College Podcast Network and host of the Radio Free Hillsdale Hour, as well as Wasn't That Special, 50 Years of Saturday Night Live, and many other podcasts. Scott, always good to have you with us.
Greg, good to be here. I think questions have to be asked, though, about the tree. Had the tree been there for years and no one knew about it? Had the tree been there for a while and was hidden and covered up? There are so many questions about this tree we need to find out.
Very good foreshadowing, Scott. Very good indeed. So, yeah, we're obviously going to be talking about Joe Biden. Scott and I had already been planning to talk about the Hur tapes, which got dropped late last week. I'm not really sure why the timing of that was, although we may have gotten a clue with yesterday's announcement, of course, about the former president's cancer diagnosis. So we are going to be talking a lot about both. We'll also be taking a look at the decline of public education, one of America's biggest cities, which is not a surprise given what we've seen in Chicago. But we have so much to talk about today. We don't have time to talk about the results of the Cubs-Sox weekend series, which I'm sure Scott is crestfallen about. So
it's, par for the course.
Let's talk about our first great sponsor, and that's Fast Growing Trees, the biggest online nursery in the United States with thousands of different plants and more than 2 million happy customers. And Fast Growing Trees has been very, very good to the Columbus family. We've had spice plants, and Mrs. Columbus has used the parsley and the basil and the oregano in our food. We've had the lemon plant. We've just gotten the snake plant, which is looking fantastic. Excited about that one. But Fast Growing Trees is not only going to give you fantastic products. With Fast Growing Trees, you're supporting an American company that partners with American growers. So you're dealing with American products all the way through here. This spring, get up to 50% off select plants at fastgrowingtrees.com/martini. Plus, use the code Martini at checkout for an extra 15% off your first purchase. Visit fastgrowingtrees.com/martini and use the code Martini. Now's the perfect time to plant. Offer valid for a limited time. Terms apply. fastgrowingtrees.com/martini. All right, Scott, as I mentioned, we're probably going to lead off with the Biden-Hur tapes, and we will get to that in the second Martini. But yesterday afternoon, while I was watching the PGA Championship, and I'm sure you were doing something equally fun.
No, I was watching the Cubs and Sox. It was not
so not as fun for you. But we get this text. I got it over my phone with the news alert and so forth. President Biden diagnosed with prostate cancer. And we had heard, there had been reports earlier in the week that there was a nodule found on the prostate. When you're a public figure of that level, they give you lots of details about your personal health and that sort of thing. And so, unfortunately, you read the report, it's not just that he has prostate cancer, it's late-stage prostate cancer. It's metastasized to the bone. They say, fortunately, it's hormone-related, and they might be able to at least fend it off effectively for a little while. Hopefully that's the case. We certainly don't wish any ill to the president. We wish he can beat this back and live a relatively healthy life for a while. But it also raises more questions, Scott, and we'll talk about that in the second Martini as well, because this previous administration, the media that covered them and more, have proven themselves completely incapable or unwilling to tell the truth about the president's health. Mostly we were focused on the cognitive side, but now we look at the physical side as well. So a lot of folks are suggesting that we need an even deeper look into this now at a time when the Democrats are hoping that we'll back off. But as this news came out, others were focusing on clips like this from Joe Biden in 2022, which at the time was dismissed as a slip of the tongue.
That's why I and so damn many other people I grew up have cancer, and why for the longest time, Delaware had the highest cancer rate in the nation.
And so the White House immediately said any speculation in that category was wrong. There had been some minor issues with skin cancer with Biden in the past, so maybe they dismissed it as that as well. This morning on Morning Joe, Ezekiel Emanuel, who was a big proponent of Obamacare back in the days, also the brother of Rahm Emanuel, was on with Joe Scarborough saying there's no way this just popped up.
You believe it is likely, if this prostate cancer has spread to the bone, that he could have had it for up to a decade, but certainly it's likely. Would it be fair to say it's likely to have had this for at least several years?
Oh, more than several years. You don't get prostate cancer.
So again, I just want to stop you. So this is not speculation. If you have prostate cancer that is spread to the bone, then he's most certainly, you were saying, had it when he was president of the United States.
Oh, yeah. He did not develop it in the last 100, 200 days. He had it while he was president. He probably had it at the start of his presidency in 2021. Yes, that I don't think there's any disagreement.
And then the question, of course, is he might have had it, but did he actually know it? Sometimes it does get to late stage before you know it. Republican Congressman Greg Murphy of North Carolina is a urologist, and he says a below normal PSA can still mean that you have prostate cancer. That's not the only test you should do. You should have a more thorough examination from your doctor. And so if there aren't obvious symptoms emerging until late, it's possible that this wasn't known. But Scott, given the supposedly thorough examination that the presidents get in their annual physical every year, you would think that this was something that should have been detected quite a while ago. But the biggest problem here for Team Biden and the media is they have zero credibility left. So even if they do say, whether it's true or not, that this wasn't known until very recently, they shouldn't be believed because they've given us no reason to.
Not a doctor. Don't play one on the radio. Find it hard to believe the president wasn't getting every single test necessary, possible, for anything. Guy's, 80 years old, right? So to do one test and not do another, it doesn't make a lot of sense. It makes much more sense that this has been around for quite a long time. And as Zeke Emanuel said, he had cancer while he was president, possibly had cancer while he was a candidate, right, pre-2020. And we don't know. We don't know because we know there's lots of things that we weren't told during the course of Joe Biden's campaign and his presidency. It's fair to ask if he would have won in November, if we would even be told today that this cancer is at the stage it is at, because so many people were clinging to Joe Biden to cling to the power of the presidency. And it's, it brings up so many questions. If he did have it for the past 5 years, 6 years, was he undergoing treatment? What were the side effects of that treatment? Is this why he was going to Delaware every weekend, where there are no official visitor logs being kept and anyone can visit him and come and go, right? There are so many questions, and the media doesn't have the credibility to go back and try to answer these. And so we're all kind of, I want to say lost, but we're all sort of trying to put pieces together without the help of people who might generally be the ones to help find us those answers. Mary Catherine Ham tweeted yesterday about, we have her report audio out on Friday, and we'll talk more about in a second, and it's damning. And we have the books out, and Jake Tapper and Alex Thompson's book, and it's damning. And so what is the Biden go-to move when there's bad stuff happening? It's to go and point to some sort of personal tragedy to excuse this personal failing. He's always referencing his son, always referencing how he died, how he served. There's always some sort of personal tragedy that he's able to exploit, or his, again, horrible case of his wife and kids dying in that car crash years. But it's always pointed to when something else is brought up. And so now we have a horrible week for Joe Biden, and the news about this cancer happens to drop over the weekend after the Friday dropping of the Hur report audio. So that all seems a bit too convenient too. What we're seeing put together here, Greg, is a picture of a president who was clearly incapacitated and now likely in multiple ways, mentally and physically. And the more we learn, David Axelrod had a comment yesterday on CNN, I think, about we should just not talk about this anymore. The time to talk about Joe Biden is done now that he has cancer. The time to talk about it more than ever is right now. because people need to be asked and people need to answer questions about when they knew, why didn't the American public know, all the pardons that he signed late in his presidency. Was he aware what he was doing? There are so many questions that now pop up based on the knowledge that we have. And the picture that is now painted is of a clearly sick, infirmed president, again, both mentally and physically, who is being taken advantage of by those closest to him, family, advisors, people in the White House trying to use him, get him to run for another term, and then prop him up for 4 more years in order to retain power. It's kind of a sick story.
It's a very sick story, and he was exploited, basically. I mean, his ego certainly fed into it. He could have said no, but he still obviously wanted to remain president. So he's not blameless here, but the people around him, the people who really lied to the American people on a day in and day out basis, absolutely need to face the music here because, like you said, there's still a lot of unanswered questions. If he was incapacitated for 18 hours a day, who was running the show? What was the process like at the White House? How were things getting done, if they were getting done at all? The way that this book is being rolled out is that, okay, this is exposing everything. It's barely scratching the surface. It's basically covering the backside of Jake Tapper and some other folks who are talking anonymously in this book. You mentioned David Axelrod, who is no stranger into digging into very personal business for political advantage, by the way. He said, yes, that Biden's mental acuity, quote, should be more muted and set aside for now, meaning in perpetuity, as he's struggling through this. I think you can be sensitive to what Biden's going through while still demanding answers from the people around him who largely betrayed this country. But I also want to point out, Scott, that the media is not incapable of covering a president's health. I did find this is just a small montage from a much larger montage of questions asked of the president's physician not that long ago.
There have been some questions as part of your exam. I'm wondering if you talked to the president about this, about the president's mental fitness. He has pushed back on that, calling himself a staple genius. Can you assess the president's mental fitness for office?
There was an incident recently where the president appeared to slur his words while giving an address. Did you look into what the cause of that might have been at all?
Could you just elaborate in layman's terms if possible, and you've been doing a great job at that, what you ruled out in these cognitive tests? There have been reports that the president has forgotten names, that he's repeating himself. Are you ruling out things like early onset Alzheimer's? Are you looking at dementia-like symptoms?
Just to make sure we're clear on this, when you analyze his cognitive ability or his neurological functions, that is not the same thing as a psychiatric exam.
A couple things probably gave it away there, from the stable genius comment to the fact that Jim Acosta was speaking there at the end. These are the reporters who were firing hard questions at Trump's doctor during his first term in a bizarre press conference where it was just palpable in the room that these reporters were basically disappointed that Trump was fine. So the media can do it, Scott. They just only do it if you're not a Democrat.
You'll hear this today or tomorrow, I'm sure. Recall, as in the montage, reporters were unafraid to confront Trump's doctors about the examinations and his weight and his height and this and that, and clearly they're just covering it up. And Trump's not a healthy guy. And Biden's doctors, of course, will get the benefit of the doubt and say these guys would never cover anything up. They'd never lie. They'd never not report something that the American public had to know. Those guys are crystal clear. Certainly, we can't point a finger at the White House doctors in this situation. So you'll see that dichotomy pop up here too.
All right. Well, when was the last time you needed to go to the doctor? Apparently, Joe Biden's needed to go for quite a while for a variety of reasons, but especially guys, we don't like to go to the doctor. It'll go away on its own. It'll stop hurting. I'm too busy. I don't know which doctor to go to. But now that process is much easier with ZocDoc. ZocDoc is a free app and website where you can search and compare high-quality in-network doctors and click to instantly book an appointment. I've told the story before about the specialist that my primary doctor recommended. That didn't work out well. A friend suggested a different one in that specialty, went on ZocDoc, checked it out, saw the reviews, and was much, much happier with that doctor. And so stop putting off those doctor's appointments and go to ZocDoc.com/3ML to find and instantly book a top-rated doctor today. That's ZocDoc.com/3ML. ZocDoc.com/3ML. All right, Scott, as promised, on to our second martini now, and that is the Hur tapes. And this is probably the least surprising but most clarifying martini we've had in a long time. It was early February 2024 when the Hur report came out and basically said we're not charging Joe Biden on mishandling classified documents. And a big reason for that is we don't think he's mentally sufficient to stand trial. And the Democrats threw up their hands. Kamala Harris, Adam Schiff especially, in the hearings that followed. How dare you, sir, suggest such a thing? Biden himself was also very mad in that press conference that was hastily assembled the night the report came out to try and do damage control, but only ended up damaging himself even more. Bit of a language warning here for little ears, but you might remember Biden saying this that night.
I know there's some attention paid to some language in the report about my recollection of events. There's even reference that I don't remember when my son died. How in the hell dare he raise that? Frankly, when I was asked the question, I thought to myself, it wasn't any of their damn business.
Well, there's only one problem with that narrative from Joe Biden. That question was never asked, and now we know for sure. We saw it in the transcript just a week later, but now we hear the actual audio, which was released on Friday. Robert Hur literally asking, where did you keep this stuff?
During this time, we were living in Chambers Road, and there were documents related to the Penn Biden Center or the Biden or the cancer shot or your book. Where did you keep papers that related to those things that you were actively working on?
Well, I don't know. This is what, 2017, 18, that area?
Yes, sir.
Remember, in this time frame, my son is either been deployed or is dying.
Beau Biden passed away in 2015. He had been deployed in Iraq about 5 years before that, I believe. Scott, here's another one where Biden wasn't quite sure when he was vice president.
Do you have any idea where this material would have been before it got moved into the garage?
Well, if it was 2013, when did I stop being vice president?
2017.
So I was vice president. So it must have come from vice president stuff. That's all I can think of.
Everyone in the Democratic Party owes Robert Hur an apology, obviously. He won't get it, of course. But what do you make of what we already knew was the case, but definitely had it confirmed last Friday?
Yeah, it's vindication for Robert Hur, if it matters to him, because these tapes are incredibly tough to listen to. Kamala Harris as well, when those tapes were released, was just brutal on Robert Hur and all sorts of accusations and insinuations about why he'd make this report. And he was right, of course. He was right. And the more we listen and learn, the farther back this timeline gets pushed, right? There's a story out this morning in Politico, another excerpt from the Tapper Thompson book regarding Congressman Mike Quigley from Illinois. And the book says that Quigley had concerns dating back to April of 2023. It was a Biden trip to Ireland, and Quigley was alongside and said, he got some energy from the people, but when he was away, he was a completely different person. Reminded him of his father or his grandfather, who battled Parkinson's disease for years. And Quigley was one of the few Democrats to go on the record fairly early last year to call on Joe Biden to drop out of the race, you would think in part because of what he saw in 2023. You also have a report from Tyler Austin Harper in The Atlantic, again, going deeper into the Tapper and Thompson book about the timeline. And in 2020, during the basement campaign, there's reports in the book that Biden would spend hours on these Zoom calls with voters, trying to get some one-on-one tape of him talking with voters about issues and concerns. And it went just horribly off the tracks. Couldn't focus, couldn't talk with people via Zoom. And there are people who were working with the video. They had hours and hours and hours of stuff, and they could barely find minutes to piece together in some coherent way of Joe Biden talking to people in 2020. There are other reports dating back to 2015, 2017, of Joe Biden beginning to lose it, for lack of a better term, and people knowing it as it was happening. This is further evidence, these Hur tapes, further evidence of what likely is the biggest scandal in presidential history. And we don't know, I will put a percent on it. What we don't know, 80% possibly at this point? There's so much we don't know about the years that Joe Biden was clearly affected. His mental acuity was affected while he was vice president, while he was running for office, while he was actually president. You know, the phrase cover-up is thrown around, and a cover-up insinuates that people were trying to stop you from knowing. Everyone knew. You knew, I knew, public knew, all these public polls that 60% of people said Joe Biden couldn't do 4 more years in office. People saw it. I'm watching every episode of SNL, as you know, Saturday Night Live. And they have jokes on Weekend Update and throughout the show in 21, 22, 23. There's a joke in 23 about Biden having full-blown CTE. There's actually a joke about this Ireland trip that the punchline is Joe Biden is so Irish, he doesn't need to drink to start slurring his words, something along those lines. Everyone knew, media members, reporters, who had their questions printed on the page for Biden to have in front of him before he called on them. We've seen these cards of Biden in meetings that say, you enter the room, you sit down, you say hello. These detailed step-by-step instructions. We all saw it. So the fact that calling it a cover-up sort of eludes actually what was happening here. We all knew it was pretty crystal clear, but we're just finding out now the depths of what we didn't know and how people around him worked to make sure we couldn't find those things out. In that matter, it's a cover-up. But in terms of, you know, sort of the bright line, bold face, Biden can't do it, Biden doesn't have the ability to be president, we all knew it.
What does accountability look like here, Scott? I mean, at this point, Biden's a sick, confused old man at this point. I doubt there'll be any consequences for him. But what the people that actively went and obfuscated, or at least tried to, even though we all saw it anyway, the press office, the chief of staff, the people who tried to manipulate and manage everything and reduce his appearances. I just don't think it's going to happen. I think part of the book is to shift blame, and the other part is to do as much damage control as possible for the Democratic Party and the media and just move on. I don't think that's going to work, but I don't think we're ever going to get as deep as we need to.
It's unlikely, I suppose, and I don't know what the kind of consequences are available. At least you want people to be brought in under oath, tell us what happened, what they knew, what decisions were made, what decisions Biden made, and what decisions people around Biden made, what decisions we knew he was cognizant of making, and what he didn't know was happening around him. I can't even remember the story at this point, but what was that story where someone said that you did this and the president said, no, I didn't? And I can't recall what that was. But
it was Mike Johnson about suspending liquified natural gas exports.
Yes. Thank you for that. Yeah. Mike Johnson told us that story a couple of months ago about the liquefied natural gas banning the export. And Biden said, I didn't do that. But he did. He signed it. How many things like that happened during the administration? Those are things we have to find out. So at the very least, you've got to have people in. You've got to have people under oath so we know the story, so we know what happened, so we know what decisions were his, which ones were not. And I don't know. I just don't. I haven't looked, right, what the consequences might be if they are legal or otherwise, or if things like if he were signing pardons, that he was completely unaware of the circumstances, the people, anything that can be done about that. I don't know. But there has to be, the only way is to bring people in, find out under oath what they knew, and move forward from there. And I don't think it's going to be a successful effort to stop that from happening at this point. For David Axelrod to say, he's sick now, you don't have to investigate. He's not president now, you don't have to investigate. Because Kamala Harris might run for president in 2028. Don't we have the right to know what she knew and why she wasn't telling us the truth? So many things like that. There's Chuck Schumer, anyone close to the president, president's advisors. Should they work in politics again? There's so much we don't know. We're just seeing the tip of the iceberg.
And the fact that there's not a camera crew outside Kamala's house 24/7 trying to get answers to all this proves that the media is still not interested in the truth.
Well, look, Sunday shows, right? George Stephanopoulos now has a cottage industry of bringing on Republican guests and then spending 3 minutes asking 12 consecutive times about January 6th and stolen elections and not stopping no matter what the answer is, and asking and asking and asking. Maybe Kristen Welker at NBC can be the official Biden questioner. Every Democrat that comes on Meet the Press at NBC, you got to spend 5 minutes asking Could the president be the president? When did you know? Did you know about this story? What consequences should meet his advisors? Those are questions that people could ask.
Now let's talk about something way better than that, and it's where Scott is right now, Hillsdale College. You will learn integrity. You'll learn the truth. You'll learn the great books. You'll learn the great American founding. You'll also learn the basics on things like capitalism. Right now, Hillsdale College is offering the new course, Understanding Capitalism, that you can get for free.
Indeed. And my friend Dr. Charles Steele is your teacher for this Understanding Capitalism course. One of 40 free online courses offered by Hillsdale College. This Understanding Capitalism course, understand profit and loss, how human nature plays a role in our economic system. One of our favorite terms in the economics department here is incentives, how incentives play a role in economics and in capitalism, why capitalism depends on private property rights, the rule of law, and freedom, and why it's a system that encourages morality rather than undermines it. Dr. Steele's a great teacher, and in these 7 lectures, which you can take at your own pace when you have time, start and stop whenever you have to, you'll learn all of it, and you'll have a true understanding of capitalism when all is said and done.
Can't beat that. Go right now to hillsdale.edu/martini to enroll in this course, Understanding Capitalism. There is no cost, and it's easy to get started. hillsdale.edu/martini to enroll for free.
Are you one of the 7 in 10 Americans reporting peak financial stress?
The Watchdog on Wall Street podcast with Chris Markowski. Every day, Chris helps unpack the connection between politics and the economy and how it affects your wallet.
70% of Americans are financially stressed, but 40% of those people are taking multiple days off work to cope with it. If that's your plan, you're doing it wrong.
Whether it's happening in D.C. or down on Wall Street, it's affecting you financially. Be informed. Check out the Watchdog on Wall Street podcast with Chris Markowski on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast.
Let's move to Chicago area schools, which is always finding itself either in the bad or the crazy martini. Today it's the crazy, but Scott flagged this one. This is from the Chalkbeat blog, but it's also from WBEZ. Across Chicago public schools, nearly 25,000 high school students, or a quarter of all high schoolers, missed at least 35 days last year, according to CPS data obtained by WBEZ and Chalkbeat. That's double the number of students who missed that much school in 2019, just before the pandemic, and twice the number of days the state deems troublesome enough to flag a student as chronically absent. And yet, Chicago Public Schools graduation rate has continued to inch up from 81% in 2019 to 85% in 2024. And that's because school district officials, this blog says, are giving students more chances to make up work and pass their classes even after weeks of absences. And shockingly, or not, their standardized test scores are not doing better at all. 35, this is averaging 12th graders, more than 35 absences a year. That's double the number of problem absences. And as we know, Scott, 40 years ago, missing 9 in the Chicago area was enough to get you in a lot of trouble, as Ferris Bueller found out, but fortunately avoided. But this is a massive problem. This is self-inflicted by the Chicago Public Schools and other major schools around the country. And it's hard to see how it's going to get better real soon.
There's a number I've been tracking these past couple of years, and it's the chronically truant percentage at a district. And I know you can find it in Michigan. I know you can find it in Illinois because I've looked for numbers in the state in which I previously lived. I imagine these numbers are pretty easy to find wherever you are across the country. You will be shocked, if you haven't looked yet, the percentage of students in maybe your district that are chronically truant. That's not 35 days like the Chicago. I think it's 21 days. I can't remember the exact number, but it's a significant number of days. And the percentage of students in districts like in the city of Detroit is extremely high. Other districts around Michigan, very high. Even in your own home district, you might be surprised by how many students miss a significant number of classes. And the Chicago report, again, says that a quarter of high schoolers missed more than a month. 25%, 1 in 4, gone for more than a month of school during the course of the year. Greg, I'm sorry, but you can't learn if you're not in school. You can try to make up work. It's nearly impossible to do so. And if you miss a month, you're missing just an enormous amount of material. You would think that Chicago Public Schools would want to stop this. You'd be wrong. The CPS CEO, quote, "We as a system have been focused on not punishing students for being absent, but really understanding what are the barriers and trying to work actively to address that and also to support them not to miss learning opportunities." I don't really know what that means, other than they're not punishing kids for missing school. And then they're creating like this auxiliary method of study where if you miss a ton of time, we've got this other path you can go down to try to make up all your work. It's not going to be as good, but it'll get you close to a point where we can officially say you've met the requirements for graduation. Again, the graduation rate in Chicago, despite a quarter of high schoolers missing more than 30 days, is up from 81% to 85% over the past 4 years. And why do people feel comfortable missing class? Well, one principal says cutting school comes down to a COVID-era attitude shift among students and families, a radical devaluing of showing up, which is what we all, at least on this side of the aisle, were saying for the months and years that kids were kept out of school, that we are now training this generation that being in school is not important. You can learn remotely. You can show up when you want. It's not important to be in a classroom with a teacher. And shockingly, that attitude is now being adopted by parents and students in the Chicago district. And again, based on chronic truancy rates that I've seen elsewhere in many, 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 many other places. Incredibly harmful.
It's awful. And, the left loves the term root causes. It's the administrators. It's the unions that started all this. The parents were sending their kids to school, at least at a much better clip than they are now. It's because the districts in many parts of the country conditioned them to conclude, and how wouldn't you, that it's not that important to be there. Maybe we'll do a little bit over Zoom, or maybe we'll just not be in school for a while. Because remember, it was January of 2022, almost 2 years after the pandemic began, that the Chicago Teachers Union put out that infamous tweet saying that they wanted to keep schools closed and any opposition was rooted in racism and misogyny. So any attempt to rewrite this and blame it originally on parents and students, they might bear some blame now, but originally, not a chance.
Not a chance. And Chicago Teachers Union is the strongest union in the country. They're going to continue to get their way, which means it's not likely things are going to change anytime soon.
Scott, thank you so much for pinch hitting for Jim, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, Greg. Appreciate it.
Scot Bertram is the general manager of WRFH, Radio Free Hillsdale, 101.7 on the campus of Hillsdale College. He's also the director of the Hillsdale College Podcast Network, host of the Radio Free Hillsdale Hour, and several other college-related podcasts. He's also the host of Wasn't That Special, 50 Years of Saturday Night Live. I'm Greg Corumbus of Radio America. Thanks so much for listening today. Please subscribe to the podcast. If you don't already, tell your friends about us as well. Thanks also for your 5-star ratings and your kind reviews for the 3 Martini Lunch. Please keep those coming. Get us on your home devices. All you have to say is play 3 Martini Lunch podcast. Follow all of us on X. Scott is at Scot Bertram with 1 T in Scott. Jim is at Jim Garrity. I'm at Greg Corumbus. Have a terrific Monday. Join us again on Tuesday for the next 3 Martini Lunch.